This happened a few months ago. I'm Mike, 34 years old. I'm a naval historian and documentary filmmaker. I was on a funded expedition to Antarctica to uncover secrets about Operation Highjump. I had always craved adventure, and the mystery of the place excited me. The isolation was incredible. The endless white landscapes surrounded me. The cold bit at my skin. One day, my crew and I were exploring the old research outpost. We found equipment that looked untouched for decades. I felt a chill run through me, not just from the cold but from a strange unease. I discovered old film reels buried in the snow. They were labeled Operation Highjump. I was curious, so I viewed the footage. Static crackled through the small room. The images flickered on the screen. There were strange structures, and shadows moved in a way that felt wrong. I didn't mention it to the crew. I thought maybe I imagined things. But over the days, everything escalated. I saw shadows moving out of the corner of my eye. The others felt it too. They heard odd noises, whispers that echoed through the cold air. I tried to shake it off. Maybe it was the pressure. I couldn't tell what was real anymore. As we dove into Operation Highjump's history, I found references to ancient artifacts hidden under the ice. My mind started to slip. We were a small team, and one by one, crew members started to disappear. At first, I thought they wandered off. It grew worse. We searched everywhere, but they vanished without a trace. My heart raced each time I called their names, each time I heard the ice crack beneath me. One day, I found a piece of equipment near the edge of our camp. I felt sickness grip my stomach. I wanted to go home, but something pulled me back. I had to know what was happening. I hesitated, stared at the old footage again. Sweat poured down my back despite the cold. That night, I was alone in the outpost. I heard footsteps outside. I turned slowly, my breath quickening. No one was there. I felt cold dread wash over me. I called out into the biting wind. Silence answered me. Over the next few nights, the fear deepened. I found more equipment abandoned, signs that someone else was inside our camp. I wanted to scream. Then I noticed changes in the remaining crew. They were jumpy, eyes darting around. I tried to reassure them, but my own fear was growing. One evening, I caught a glimpse of something in the distance. It was tall, too tall. It stood still, watching us. I tried to point it out, but when I looked again, it was gone. My heart pounded, but I couldn't leave. I had to know. In the following days, the whispers grew louder. We could all hear them, creeping into our minds. Just before dawn, I woke to the sound of my crew packing. They were leaving. I felt panic swirl inside me. I couldn't let them go. But when I reached for them, they turned to me with empty eyes. They weren't my crew anymore. As I backed away, I took one last look at the footage. It glitched and showed something monstrous lurking under the ice. Now, I'm alone, and I don't know what waits for me outside. I think I uncovered something meant to stay hidden. Something ancient. Something hungry. The cold was unbearable, piercing through the fabric of my jacket. I stood alone in the outpost, my heartbeat echoing in my ears. I glanced outside, half expecting the tall figure to reappear. But the wind howled, and the snow danced in suspension, just like the fear that gripped me. I knew I had to check the rest of the equipment. Maybe there were answers, something that could explain this madness. I pulled on my gloves and stepped outside, the crunch of snow beneath my boots sounding impossibly loud. The camp was silent, too silent. I called out, hoping for a reply that would never come. As I searched, I noticed the faint outline of what seemed to be a trail leading away from the camp. My stomach turned. It led toward the ice and away from everything familiar. I hesitated. Should I follow it? I knew it was a terrible idea, but the urge to uncover the truth overwhelmed my caution. That I took a deep breath and followed the trail. The wind whipped against my face, and I had to shield my eyes from the biting cold. Every instinct told me to turn back, but the need for answers pushed me onward. The snow here was disturbed, as if something heavy had passed over it recently. I carefully stepped around jagged ice formations that could easily trip me up, then I found it a piece of metal jutting from the snow, different from the other equipment we decollected. I knelt down, my breath forming clouds in the frigid air. It was a small, circular object, engraved with strange symbols. This wasn't anything I had seen before. My heart raced as I traced the carvings with my fingers. What was this? Suddenly, a noise shattered the silence. It came from behind me, a low rumble that seemed to come from deep within the earth. The sound was like a freight train approaching, loud and menacing. I turned, instinct kicking in. That's when I saw it. The tall figure re-emerged, looming against the horizon, more defined now. It was not just watching, it was moving closer. Panic surged through me, but my legs felt frozen, as if held in place by an unseen force. Then the ground rattled violently beneath me, and I stumbled, falling to one knee. The creature's features were still shrouded in shadows, but I could make out a chilling silhouette. My breath quickened, and I fought the instinct to scream. I needed to move, I needed to escape. I scrambled to my feet, the circular object slipping from my grasp and sinking into the snow. As I turned to run back to camp, the whispers enveloped me again, louder this time. They were frantic, filled with urgency. I stumbled over the snow, the echoes pressing in on me. Just as I reached the camp, I glanced back. The figure no longer stood still. It was racing toward me, its speed impossible for something of its size. I burst into the outpost, slamming the door shut behind me. Breathless and trembling, I leaned against the wall, desperate to formulate a plan. I needed to arm myself, to find a way out of this nightmare. But then I realized, the shadows in here were moving too. Something was already inside. As I fumbled for my gear, I felt a chill run through me, not just from the cold. The whispers grew clearer, forming words I could almost understand. My heart dropped. Whatever I had uncovered was not just ancient. It was alive, and it knew I was here. I pressed my back against the wall, fighting the urge to scream. The shadows danced across the walls, twisting and writhing like living things. I grasped my flashlight tightly, praying its beam would seep through the darkness and reveal whatever was lurking inside. With shaking hands, I flicked the switch. The light cut through the blackness, illuminating the cramped corners of the outpost. My mind raced. I needed to find a weapon, anything that could fend off whatever had followed me back in. I tore through the supplies, searching frantically. All I found was a thick metal wrench. It was heavy and might do some damage, but it felt far too flimsy for the terror lurking outside. The whispers came again, more distinct this time. As I strained to understand, one word broke through the cacophony: contact. My heart raced. Was it warning me? I couldn't let it get inside my head. That thought alone made me feel vulnerable, exposed. Suddenly, the door rattled violently, pulling me from my thoughts. My pulse quickened as I grasped the wrench, holding it at the ready. The door shook again, and I backed away, pressing myself deeper into the shadowed space. It burst open, flinging against the wall with a deafening crash. The force knocked over a stack of gear, sending crates tumbling. I felt the icy breath of the outside air rushing in, but there was no sign of the tall figure. Only the howling wind and swirls of snow swept inside. I hesitated, scanning the doorway for movement. Then I caught sight of it, a dark silhouette on the edge of the doorway, just beyond the light. The creature stood still, and I could see its outlined sharply against the swirling snow outside. My mind raced with instinctual fears. Should I get out of here? Could I escape before it came in? The whispers intensified again, a frantic chorus. There was something more than just one presence. Shadows shifted and blended together. My skin tingled with awareness, like every hair on my body was a live wire. I felt a pull, a deep, unsettling urge to step closer to the doorway. It was as if the darkness was beckoning me, promising answers if I just reached out. That I took a step forward, wrench still in hand, but dread held me back. A sudden, bone-chilling realization gripped me: this wasn't just an isolated encounter. The symbols on the metal object and the whispers pointed to something much larger, something that might have been waiting for us long before we arrived. Before I could react, a second figure emerged behind the first, shifting into the faint light. It was shorter, more hunched, but equally unsettling. My breath hitched. There were more. I could see their faces now, grotesque, almost human yet distorted, flickering like shadows cast by a fire. My heart raced as the whispers crescendoed, their urgency clawing at my sanity. I had to move, I had to reclaim control before it overwhelmed me. I glanced back to the equipment and saw the radio transmitter, my last hope. I sprinted for it, knowing I needed to send out a warning, to call for help. The moment my fingers touched the cold metal, the air changed. I turned, and the figures converged, blocking my only escape. Their whispers morphed into one unified voice, drawing me into a swirling abyss of terror. I had one choice: to face whatever truth they would reveal, or to be consumed by the darkness surrounding me. Just as they advanced, the lights flickered, and for a brief moment, everything went dark. When the lights came back on, everything shifted. The room felt alive with oppressive energy. I blinked, trying to get my bearings. The silhouettes loomed closer, their outlines sharper now. Fear coursed through me, but I knew I couldn't afford to freeze. That I crouched low, wrench gripped tightly in my hand. My heart thundered as I surveyed the space again. The figures didn't look like they were coming to harm me. It was as if they waited for something, a signal, a command. I held my breath, listening for the whispers that now sounded more like an incantation, raising the hairs on the back of my neck. A low hum began to resonate through the air, growing louder, reverberating against the walls. I turned my focus back to the radio transmitter, praying it still worked. I had to try. The urgency swept through me, igniting a desperate spark. I lunged toward it, fingers rushing across the transmitter's surface, frantically turning knobs and pressing buttons. The air crackled around me, and the humming intensified. I gritted my teeth, willing something to happen. I had no clue how the equipment worked, but I had to send a message. A chill ran down my spine as the figures moved closer, their features twisted in expressions I couldn't quite comprehend. Then, as if answering my plea, the transmitter let out a burst of static. It sounded like a voice breaking through, garbled but unmistakably human. Message, bass, came crackling through, cut off by a surge of crackling noise. Hope surged through me. I had connected. But then the power flickered again. My heart sank as the lights went dim, and the comforting hum of the equipment began to fade. The figures didn't seem pleased. The murmurs escalated into a cacophony, shifting from a whisper to a shriek. They surged forward as if the darkness was pulling them into the light like moths to a flame. Desperation surged within me as I fumbled with the controls again, pressing harder this time, my fingers racing. But my heart sank. The machinery had gone silent, leaving only the chaotic whispers echoing in my mind. That was when I noticed that the symbols I had seen earlier on the bizarre metal object weren't just scratching against my consciousness, they were glowing faintly at the edges of the room. They pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. That I stepped back, while the figures crowded closer. They seemed to respond to the glowing symbols, their bodies shifting and morphing. Then I saw it. The symbols began to form a series of words, appearing like neon signs against the shadow-filled walls. What had felt like mere whispers were now clear statements, taunting and beckoning me closer. Comments icon join us, they murmured. That I felt my resolve weaken. The urge to comprehend what lay on the other side was overwhelming. I could feel the pull, but I also felt the danger threading between choice and submission. Just as I was about to give in, a sudden rumble echoed from outside, shaking the very foundation of the outpost. A thunderous crash followed, rattling the windows. The lights flickered one last time before plunging into total darkness, leaving me surrounded by the unknown once more. I braced myself for whatever was next. I was out of time and options. A new instinct kicked in. I needed to figure out what I was dealing with before I lost myself completely. That was when I remembered the back entrance. If I could make it there, I might find a way out of the shadows that had consumed me. I turned, heart pounding, and dashed toward the back entrance. The floor creaked beneath my feet, echoing through the silence. The figures around me remained still, their presence thick in the air like an unwelcome fog. I couldn't shake the feeling that their gaze was on me, weighing my every move. As I reached the doorway, I fumbled with the handle. It felt icy against my skin, but relief washed over me when it gave way. I burst through, stepping into the narrow hallway. I glanced back just in time to see the faint glow of the symbols dimming, almost reluctantly retreating. I took a deep breath and pressed onward, adrenaline fueling my legs. The hallway was cluttered with debris, remnants of equipment scattered about. I navigated the wreckage, hearing only the sounds of my rapid breaths and the distant hum of the storm outside. I felt distracted, every shred of instinct urging me to look back. But I forced myself to remain focused. I had to find a way out. Suddenly, a sound froze me in place. A soft, almost melodic voice pierced the silence from the direction I had just come. It called my name, echoing around me. I wanted to cringe at the familiarity of it. My heart raced anew. No, just ignore it, I whispered to myself, trying to move again. But my feet felt stuck, chained to the floor by an unshakable dread. Then I saw a flicker of light in the distance, growing brighter. I squinted to discern the source. It came from one of the rooms at the end of the hall, a door ajar with the light spilling out like liquid gold. Curiosity clawed at me, but so did the fear of whatever was behind it. That I took a cautious step forward. As I drew nearer, the voice called again, now layered with an edge of urgency. Help us. The plea sent a chill through me, but I couldn't help but feel the weight of that word, help. They weren't just asking, they were pleading. That I hesitated, torn between compassion and caution. I couldn't deny the pull deep inside me, but what it promised felt dangerously ambiguous. I inched closer, compelled by the unsettling mix of fear and curiosity. Then, just as I was about to reach out for the door, a loud crash erupted from behind me. The figures had followed me, their shadows now loomed large in the hallway. Panic surged through me. I had seconds to decide, was it safety in the light ahead or confrontation with the unknown behind? Before I could even think, I bolted for the room. The door swung wide open with a loud creak, and I stumbled inside. The light enveloped me, and I felt a brief sense of warmth, but I couldn't shake the weight of what lingered behind me. That's when I saw a collection of strange devices scattered across the floor, each sparking with energy. They seemed to react to my presence, vibrating with an intensity that sent shockwaves through the air. Then I heard it again, clearer this time, help us. I had no idea who or what I was dealing with, but as the figures drew closer, closing in on the threshold, I knew one thing. I was running out of time. I scanned the room, my pulse quickening with every moment that passed. The devices on the floor looked like a mix of old and new technology, wires tangled like vines. Each sparking connection hissed softly, almost like a whisper, urging me to approach. My instincts screamed caution, yet the call for help tugged at me, a haunting melody I couldn't ignore. That I took a hesitant step forward, feeling a strange warmth emanating from one of the devices. It was shaped like a small orb, inlaid with symbols similar to those I had seen just moments before. As I knelt beside it, the orb pulsed brighter, casting flickering shadows against the wall. The voice called again, more desperate this time. Help us. Just then, the figures outside the doorway shifted. I heard their shuffling footsteps, creating a low murmur that sent shivers down my spine. They were closing in fast. I couldn't waste another moment. With shaking hands, I picked up the orb, feeling its energy surge through me. As it pulsed, memories flooded my mind, images of faces, a ship lost in the ice, and cries of terror. I gasped, the visions overwhelming. Who were they? Why did they need my help? What had happened to them? In the chaos of those revelations, I realized I had to act. I followed the trail of wires leading to an array of larger machines against the far wall. They were imposing, towering like ominous sentinels. I had no idea how they worked, but I could sense an urgency to activate them. I had to try. As I approached, the figures were almost at the threshold. Their silhouettes loomed large and indistinct, merging with the shadows around them. Panic clawed at the edges of my mind. I set the orb down and fumbled with the controls on the nearest machine. Buttons and levers seemed to wink at me with promises of power. "Please." The voice urged again, now a terrified wail that resonated deep within me. I squeezed my eyes shut, thoughts racing. This was my chance, but what if I failed? What if I triggered something worse? "Just work." I yelled at the machine, slamming a hand down on a big red button. The room erupted. Sparks flared, and the machines hummed violently to life, filling the air with a buzz that felt electric. Lights flickered overhead as I stumbled back, heart racing, feeling something shift in the very air around me. The figures outside the door flinched, shadows altering as a portal of light began to open around the machines. I watched, transfixed, as bright energy swirled and twisted before solidifying into a translucent barrier. It shimmered like a mirage, compelling yet terrifying. What did I just unleash? I felt dread wash over me, but I couldn't stop now. The figures hesitated, caught in the light's glow. A surge of bravery ignited inside me. I had to face them. And then, from the crack of the door, a new figure stepped into the light, a familiar face I thought I'd never see again. My heart sank at the impossible sight. I hadn't just opened a door, I had opened a floodgate of memories, terror, and lingering questions. And the answers were closer than I ever wanted them to be. I blinked, uncertain if my mind was playing tricks. The last time I'd seen her, everything had spiraled into chaos. Now, here she was, stepping through the radiant barrier, her expression just as bewildered as mine. "Jessica." I whispered, the name barely escaping my lips. I had hoped, dreamed even, of finding her, but not like this, not in a place like this. The shadows melted away from her face, revealing the fear and determination that had always defined her. "Get back!" she shouted suddenly, urgency crackling between us. Her eyes darted behind me, toward the doorway I had just sealed with light. I turned just as the figures rushed forward. They were indistinct, but their intent was clear. I stumbled backward, adrenaline surging. "What's happening?" "They're coming!" she screamed, her voice sharp with panic. She pointed to the machines. "Is that what you activated? What did you do?" "No time to explain." I snapped, feeling the weight of the orb in my pocket. It thrummed against my skin, and somehow, I sensed it was tied to this moment. "We have to find a way out." As if responding to our urgency, the machines around us began to hum louder, their lights pulsing in rhythm with the orb. I glanced at Jessica. "What do you know about this place?" "I was with them," she said, voice low. "The Navy team. I saw things I can't explain." My mind raced. "You were part of Operation Highjump?" She nodded, but her eyes widened. "And you don't know what lies beneath the ice. We shouldn't have come here. It's not just a mission, it's a warning." The figures outside were now at the light's edge, reaching towards us, their forms flickering. Fear was palpable, making my throat dry. "What do you mean a warning?" In that moment, one figure lunged forward, its arm outstretched. The barrier rippled, and I recoiled as a surge of pain shot through me, connecting me to the orb and the machines. Ghostly images flashed: soldiers trapped, whispers of failure, and an identity lost to the bitter cold of Antarctica. That's when I saw it, a metal structure, half buried in the ice, with symbols identical to those on the orb. My breath caught. "The ship. It's real." Jessica nodded fervently, her face pale. "We need to shut it down. Before they break through." I looked from her to the machines. Panic surged as I realized I had no clue how to do that. The figures clawed at the barrier, their faces twisting in a mix of anguish and fury. I could feel their desperation, almost like they were alive, pleading for release. In that instant, a chilling gust swept through the room. The lights flickered ominously, and the air thickened. Like a punch to the gut, everything went dark, and I felt myself being pulled into the shadows. I blinked frantically, the machines fading from view, the orb slipping from my grasp. I grasped at air, fighting against the pull, and heard Jessica's voice shouted from the void. Then everything went silent. My last thought was that this might not be the end, but the beginning of something much worse. I gasped, lungs burning, as light flooded back into view. I was sprawled on a cold metal floor, disoriented. The stark room around me was empty, save for the shadows gathering at the edges. I pushed myself up, a deep ache reverberating through my bones. "Jessica!" I shouted, panic rising within me. My voice echoed in the silence, but there was no answer. I looked around, my heart racing. Had I been separated from her? Then my gaze fell on the orb, still glowing faintly on the ground. I scrambled to grab it, slipping my fingers around the smooth surface. It pulsed in response, almost as if it recognized me. I took a steadying breath and focused. That's when I noticed the walls. They were lined with strange symbols, similar to the ones on the orb. It was as if the room itself was alive, breathing with a secret I was desperate to understand. I moved closer to the wall, tracing the markings with trembling fingers. They felt warm, and a surge of energy ran through me. A low humming filled the room, growing louder with each passing second. My pulse quickened. I backed away, eyes darting to the far end of the chamber. A doorway stood ajar, shrouded in creeping shadows. Should I stay or should I go? The shadows felt menacing, something deep in my gut urging caution. This has to be connected to Operation Highjump. Jessica had been part of it, and she knew things about this place that I didn't. I needed to find her, but I also had to understand what I was dealing with. Cautiously, I moved toward the doorway. The humming intensified, thrumming through the floor beneath my feet. I stepped over the threshold, instantly feeling the temperature drop. The next room was massive, echoing my footsteps under the dim glow of flickering lights. It was filled with strange machinery, similar to the devices I had seen earlier. Some of them appeared dormant, while others sparked with energy. As I ventured deeper, I caught sight of something on the far wall. Panels with glowing displays were filled with rapidly changing data. I rushed over to get a closer look. My heart sank as I read the words, "Containment breach," followed by warnings about unknown entities. Suddenly, the walls shivered, and the lights flickered wildly. I felt it before I saw it, a sense of being watched. I whirled around, heart pounding. For a moment, it was just shadows. Then I saw them, figures emerging from the darkness. Their forms shifted and whispered unfamiliar sounds, words tangled in a language I couldn't decipher. I stumbled backward, tripping over my own feet. Fear clawed at my throat as the figures drew closer, their features obscured but their intent unmistakable. I needed to act. Just then, the orb pulsed sharply in my hands, flooding the room with blinding light. I shielded my eyes, but then I felt its warmth course through me, filling the void of apprehension. The figures recoiled, wavering at the edge of the light. "Jessica!" I shouted, desperate for her presence, hoping she was somewhere nearby. The shadows quaked in response. The doorway I had just passed through began to close, the gap diminishing. I could feel my chance of escape slipping away. With a surge of determination, I focused on the orb, willing it to protect me. My mind raced. What were they? Why did they want to keep me here? I wouldn't let them have me, not without a fight. Then, from the darkness, one figure stepped forward, barely illuminated in the orb's glow. Its hand outstretched, trembling. A face formed hauntingly familiar. "Help us," it whispered, the words echoing in my mind. In that moment, I froze. My breath caught in my throat. What had I just walked into? The figure's voice resonated through me. I knew that face. It was Jessica, but twisted. My heart raced, caught between relief and terror. The familiarity was both a comfort and a curse. Jessica. I croaked. The name felt foreign on my tongue, her expression faltered, a flicker of recognition passing over her features. You have to help us, she said again, urgency replacing the initial panic. It's not safe here. The figures around her shifted closer, shadows swirling like dark smoke. I couldn't tell if they were allies or enemies, but the fear gnawed at me. I wanted to run, but something held me rooted in place. What happened? I forced the words out. They're coming for you, she said. We never meant for this to happen. It's all a mistake. Her eyes darted around, wide and frantic. You need to leave. I can't just abandon you. I yelled, frustration mingling with desperation. I need answers. What are those things? What did you do? Her face contorted in pain, and for a moment, I saw the worry etched deeply in her eyes. The orbit's powerful. And it's connected to them, to this place. She paused as if collecting her thoughts. The connection went wrong. It broke containment. They're desperate. They're losing control. The light from the orb flickered, and the room seemed to thrum with growing unease. Shadows lurked at the edges, creeping into my mind. What do they want? I whispered, the words barely leaving my lips that I didn't want to know, but I had to ask. Despite the fear curling in my stomach, I needed to understand what I was facing. They want to escape, she said, trembling. And they'll stop at nothing to get what they need. If you don't help us, they'll take you next. Fear shot through me, and my grip on the orb tightened. A surge of energy pulsed through my hands, almost instinctively. It was as if it sensed my dread and responded. Before I could gather my thoughts, the humming intensified. The machinery whirred to life, blue lights flashing in chaotic patterns. The figures lurched forward, thrumming with urgency, their whispers blending into a dissonant chorus. Jessica! I cried, fear stealing my voice as the light from the orb dimmed. Suddenly, the doorway lit up, an escape route shining through the darkness. A deep-rooted instinct kicked in, I had to run. Go! She shouted, tears spilling down her cheeks. I'll find you. Just don't let them reach you. In that split second, I made a choice. I turned and dashed for the doorway, heart racing, knowing that my hope lay beyond those shadows. The light grew brighter as I raced toward safety, and I glanced back one last time. Jessica was still standing there, lost in the chaos. The figures surrounded her, moving closer. I stepped through the doorway, and the light swallowed me whole. Then everything went dark. I stumbled, falling onto gravel. My breath came hard as I looked around. I was back outside. But the sky was different, an unnatural shade of green flickered through cloud cover. I realized I was in a fog-laden forest, the trees gnarled and twisted. Something else had changed too. My instincts screamed that I wasn't safe yet. Twigs cracked behind me, and I turned just in time to catch a glimpse of a shadow darting between the trees. Who or what had followed me into this new nightmare? The air was thick with tension as I navigated through the convoluted shadows of the forest. Each rustle of leaves seemed amplified, echoing my mounting anxiety. I could still feel the warmth of the orb in my pocket, pulsing gently, as if offering me hope amid the strangeness. I stumbled forward, my thoughts racing not just about the fate of Jessica and the specters I had left behind but also about what I had unleashed through that accursed orb. The trees loomed like ancient sentinels, their twisted branches creeping toward me with an eerie intent. Moments before, I was ensnared in that darkness, but now I was running from it, from the shadows that had pursued me. There was no mistaking it, they were coming after me, eager to reclaim what I had disturbed. Just ahead, a faint light flickered through the brush. I hesitated, wondering if it represented safety or another trap set by those waiting to ensnare me. A memory of the whispers danced around the edges of my mind, those haunting calls for help. But who could I trust here? My heart raced, feeling more like prey than a participant in this phantasmagorical nightmare. With no clear plan, I sprinted toward the light, driven by desperation. As I burst into a clearing, breathtaking yet haunting, I was met with a scene that temporarily stole my breath away. A glacial stream cut through the center, its surface shimmering under an otherworldly glow, ethereal and ominous. I could see shapes beneath the water, dark and shifting, fueling my dread even as the light illuminated my path. Then I heard it, the faintest echo of Jessica's voice, carried by the wind. My heart clenched at the sound. I had to find her. She was out there somewhere, trapped between the worlds I had dared to traverse. I stepped toward the water, feeling the pull of a deeper connection, a sense of urgency burgeoning from within the orb. It thrummed in my pocket, resonating with the energies around me. Just as I hovered near the stream, I caught sight of shadows circling the clearing's edge, watching, waiting. The figures I had left behind must have pursued me, following me through the fabric of reality I had so recklessly traversed. My instincts flared. I had to make a choice. The orb beckoned me, but was I drawn toward salvation or something darker? I plunged my hand into my pocket and grasped the orb, its warmth flooding my senses. As I turned, the landscape trembled, and the shadows writhed closer. It hit me, a recognition of those symbols, their patterns unveiling a purpose beyond my understanding. That I knelt by the water's edge. "What do you want?" I shouted into the quiet, the question echoing back in confusion. But as I opened my mouth to speak, a rush of memories flooded my thoughts, the menacing whispers, cries of despair, faces intertwined in anguish. They were not just prisoners, this was their prison, and I had inadvertently broken the barrier that held them at bay. A ripple broke the water's surface. Then I saw Jessica's silhouette materialize through the murky depths, a haunting image of uncertainty. Her voice rang out again, clearer now. "You must choose, Mike." She looked as if she was reaching for me, but I knew she might also be slipping away. I had a sudden urge to save her, to pull her from this nightmarish strife, but I hesitated. Suddenly, the shadows coalesced, morphing into those distorted figures I had feared. They advanced with a violent intent, my heart racing, the orb now blazing with a light so sharp it almost hurt to grasp it. With a surge of determination, I raised the orb high above my head. "This ends now," I yelled, channeling every ounce of my resolve into the act. A blinding light erupted from it, forcing the shadows to recoil. The oppressive whispers that filled the forest faded with the dawn of radiance, their anguished cries mingling with the shimmering echoes of the light cascading through the trees, and then everything fell silent. Climactic stillness enveloped the clearing, and I felt weightless. I blinked, the light haloing around me, my vision narrowing until everything collapsed into a singularity of brightness, a cosmic heartbeat echoing in my chest. When the light receded, I found myself alone, heart pounding, gasping for the familiar touch of reality once more. I was back on the frozen desert of Antarctica, standing at the edge of a vast chasm in the icy ground. My breath billowed in the cold air, awe and despair threading through my heart like icy veins. Had I truly escaped? The shadows lingered just beyond the thin veil of ice, whispering and beckoning. Jessica's voice slipped away, drowning with the howling wind. I still couldn't shake the uncertainty. Was this abyss a prison, or had I merely exchanged one bondage for another? Questions lingered like tendrils in the air, echoing in the depths of my mind. I stared into the hollow chasm, unsure if I would ever find the answers I sought or if I would forever be left adrift in this vast and treacherous void, wrestling with the remnants of that otherworldly encounter. In the end, I was still here, alive but undoubtedly changed. Shadows danced at the periphery of my vision, a reminder of what I had uncovered but never understood. Would the truth resurface, or was it always destined to remain buried beneath layers of ice and time? I took a step back, unsure of what awaited me, yet feeling the weight of history pressing down on me like the cold Antarctic winds. I guess some mysteries were not meant to be solved.